Inspiration for my piece, U.S. Grant Flux Kit Opera, really comes from my relationship with an old friend of mine who just became unbelievably interested in Ulysses Grant and actually became more like him physically as he grew older, which is really strange. And he and I were planning to do a kind of an evening-length thing where he would do a Grant impersonation, and I would play Charles Ives' Concord Sonata. But my friend died last October, and so I took all the research and I thought, what can I do with this? And I said, well, now, how can I create a work for this class I have, Digital Music Ensemble, that would let the students kind of have agency about what they wanted to do, their own level of expertise. Anyway, the score, then I just created a game board, and the students played the game using U.S. Grant tokens as the, U.S. Grant dollars as the tokens. And you get to pick, the basic four elements of theater, it's words, music, design, and set. And then there was a lot of randomness to determine what order things would happen, including what words were taken from the Gertrude Stein Four Americans or the Grant memoirs, and that all got interpolated, and I really never questioned any of it. That process is a sort of Candyland Monopoly version of a cage opera that I really know well and I've taught a lot, called Circus On. And I actually premiered Circus On as a theater piece. It was originally a radio piece. So I was always interested in creating a structure that would then kind of play itself out, and then I wouldn't have to, write any music. So to speak. Well, it's very different than my previous four operas, which I wrote every note of music and worked with a librettist or Edgar Allan Poe.
You didn't write the music?
Well, the music for Grant was all Civil War tunes, so there wasn't a note there that I actually wrote. It's more like I directed it or organized it, yeah. The lyrics are all taken from the memoirs of Grant and the Gertrude Stein. And then the way they're taken, the students, when they land on a little space that has music, they grab a card, and that has the Civil War tune on the back of the card, and that tells which tune they're responsible for sort of producing. And then they run a random number generator that determines which book they'll use, the Grant or the Stein. Then they run another random number generator to determine which page the text will come from, and then they do it all on their own. And I don't really have the right to go, I don't like that. So, even the order of those events is then determined by a random number generator, which is amazing when you consider that Appomattox is the last battle we fight, that Grant's letter to Lee about the way the soldiers would be treated, all of that was at the very, very end. And then that very sobbing plaintive just before the battle mother, that tune is just so beautiful, and it really is about a boy that's about to die. Mm-hmm. And the text that got put with that is just treacherous, and it's all about Gertrude Stein saying that the way we remember war in the United States is just absolutely, utterly perverse. And that ends up being the last piece in the whole program, by absolute luck. Well, it reaffirms my faith in chance-based procedure once again, because I really do believe in it, Well, to me, Fluxus is about a celebration of the ordinary and just saying, you know, things are good. This is good. This moment is good. So the way the piece allows for randomness to occur, and in the process of that, there has to be a kind of acceptance of anything, and also finding meaning in each moment and saying, well, okay, so the whole piece starts with this strange letter that he wrote to his wife that doesn't really have to do anything with the context of the piece. Why is that a good way to start the piece? Well, first of all, you start the piece that way. Then you ask the question, why is it a good way? And you find meaning. The way I approached the Fluxus idea kind of breathes through. The audience was entertained, but they were engaged the entire way through. And there was no, oh, I don't like this part of the story, or I don't care about the war part, or I don't care about, oh, do we have to see both Vicksburg battles, man? You know, or whatever, you know. I think what's, you know, watching, say, an event score, a Fluxus event score being performed, that there's a kind of weird intentionality, like I am polishing a rock, you know, which, how Zen is that, or whatever. And it very much, the Hindu idea of karma, or even more so, dharma, the fact that you have a purpose, a function, and you should do that function. And it's okay that you have that function and not some other function. And you shouldn't be envious of somebody else's function. And, you know, we think of that in the West and go, oh, damn, I want to be free. Anybody could be president or whatever. And you flip side of that is anybody could sell bananas and it'd be honorable. and I think Fluxus celebrates that, says, you know, you're selling bananas. That's so great. Nice job. So I'm deeply influenced by Cage, especially, you know, because in the thing that, as I get older and kind of wrestle with career stuff, I think of, there's that great story of Cage going into a party and somebody's all excited, runs up to him and says, oh, I'm playing your music, isn't it great? And he has no idea that it's his music, because his music didn't resemble itself, you know? It was very different from one thing to the next. And even the piece of music that was playing at that party was cartridge music. And I've played cartridge music a lot, actually, and there's lots of ways to approach that piece that make it sound like sort of disjuncted, like dubstep, techno, I mean, anything. So, and in fact, that score says any sound is possible in this piece. So there's that side of the fence where, and some of his music is just intensely what I would call pretty, in a real traditional sense of what pretty is. So I want that freedom, I guess. I kind of am. I'm a little nuts about holding on to that right to say, you know, if I want to write a real simple Brazilian lullaby, then, you know, tough. I'm going to do that, you know. Yeah, it's got to happen. So I use, you know, sort of the next generation out of that is somebody like Eno, and I use his oblique strategies cards a lot when I'm writing, just to remind myself, no, you may think you know the direction you're going, but why presume? Why presume anything? And I do that with ensembles too, and I love that kind of flex. So, you know, there's that, I think, there's that kind of beautiful respect for the real natural order of things, which is trusting the force in terms of chance. And, you know, producing a kind of major piece, this opera, and did it at the museum here, I'm doing it in New York, putting a lot of money and effort into it, and a lot of time. And it's a chance-based structure. I'm not playing around. It's not an intellectual game. I don't think it's cute. I don't think it's funny. I really believe in this stuff. I would even say in a religious way, I believe in it. I really, really strongly believe that the random ordering of life and of physical nature is something that we should somehow emulate in our work. Yeah, Yoko Ono, because, I mean, I grew up in the 60s. I mean, I was born in '58, so Yoko Ono was sort of this oddball character in the news. I saw her on Dick Cavett, and you'd read about the love-in and go, well, what's this about? And John and Yoko being so strongly out there and working against the Vietnam War and trying to raise consciousness, and also just kind of hanging the shingle out that says world peace is important. Hey, by the way, did you forget? World peace is really important, and we need like a bajillion more people that's all they say all the time. It's like, hey, remember world peace? Did you forget about it again? Why did you forget? Hey, world peace, right? And that commitment to and that kind of focus on the issue, but then also being able to create violent art and saying, all right, this is really awful. What's going on over here is really awful. What I've seen in my life is really awful, and I'm not going to act like that part of it doesn't affect me. I mean, Yoko Ono, tons of money, especially by the time she meets John, right? Tons of money. She doesn't have to be in touch with suffering at all. But, the first noble truth in Buddhism is dukkha, and it's suffering, and to live is to suffer, basically. And to be aware of our own suffering and other people's suffering as an act of compassion is really sort of the core of Buddha's, Four Noble Truths. And she embodied that, and she still does. I mean, she's just absolutely relentless. So I guess I admire her spine and her message in the same way that I admire somebody like the Dalai Lama. My students here at University of Michigan should know about Fluxus, should be well informed about Fluxus, because I think they have the illusion of control. I mean, especially in a very well-bred, largely white U.S. institution, there's this illusion that the world is theirs. And they have cars, they've rarely known poverty. The demographic that I teach here is a privileged group of people, and that's not their fault. They're not bad because of that. I do not despise them because of that. But Fluxus can remind us that, stuff happens. Stuff happens all the time. And that stuff deserves attention. And it could be, it could be truly wretched stuff. Destruction of a violin on stage is a wretched thing to see. But what is that if it isn't a metaphor for tragedy? And then just delightful stuff. I mean, so there's a person walking a line for a while. That's nice. People should do that. And in the texty, like, you never see people walking around just gazing around and looking at things and delighting, at the clouds or whatever, because it's like this. And that's so, I think, sad and destructive. And I think Fluxus reminds us to celebrate the moment.